Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, robot, and loin streamer, and this is Tatum. And it is his 9th birthday today as I record this. Not a day over puppy though. And happy 4th of July. So today, as y'all know, it's a great lucky day. And it's also the first video of the month, which means it is all about you guys. So today is Lmiay. And if you're new around here, Lmiay is the day where I read the stories that you guys submitted throughout the month to the prompt. And it's just kind of a way to just celebrate the creativity and really you guys for being around and just playing with fun prompts. So before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do on this channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Number two, if you would like to be featured on this channel, check out the links down in the description below. August's Lmiay is now up, and there is the fresh meat feature, which is every other Monday. That's not the first video of the month. And then number three, if you would like to check out any of my books and or roast me, they're all available at your favorite book retailers, or you can request them at your local libraries. And the second book in the Bodymore trilogy is going to be coming out this October. Keep an eye out for the arc coming up hopefully very soon. And with that said, let's jump into it. So the prompt for July was write a story where a character gets a cursed or bizarre item from a garage sale. What is it and what happens? The first story is by Egao Chan, freaking channel favorite over here. And it is called Remembrance. Are you ready, Tatum? Look, he's ready. He's ready. He's ready for the pure bliss. Look at the little face. It was an early morning. The sun was barely up, the sky was still grim, and chilly wind was breezing through the streets. Sabrina was on her first early morning stroll across the neighborhood since she moved here. This was a slightly run-down and remote community, and the local residents appeared to be mostly lower-middle-class families. On the side of the road, a chubby, middle-aged woman was organizing various decorations, furniture, and books placed on the lawn. A young girl was looking out of the house through the windows with swollen eyes, sniffling. A tall woman was sitting beside her, holding her, trying to console her. Yard sale? Sabrina took off her sunglasses and asked the middle-aged woman, smiling. What's the occasion? Oh, hello, morning. The middle-aged woman was surprised as she didn't hear Sabrina coming. Sorry, I was a bit occupied. Yeah, I'm just their neighbor. Poor Samantha there lost her husband about a month ago, so she has to move to a cheaper place with her daughter. I'm so sorry. What happened? Sabrina took a slow, deep breath in and asked. Cancer. The middle-aged woman shook her head and sighed. It's terrible. Such a good man leaving his family like that. Are these his things? Sabrina pointed at a vintage phonograph, a carpenter's toolbox, an old wooden chair, and a clearly homemade waist-high wood carving of a dog in a standing position, smiling with its tongue sticking out, holding a small sword and shield with its paws. Yes, yes. The middle-aged woman chuckled. These are the things they can't keep. Okay, I'll take them all. How much? That would be, let's see, $10, $20, $80. The middle-aged woman answered with a bright smile. Thank you very much. It would help them a lot. Do you need help bringing them back? No need. Sabrina lifted the wood carving and the toolbox with her right arm and the phonograph and the chair with her left. The sun was climbing higher, and she wanted to go back before it got too bright. Unlike her blood-sucking distant cousins, she could withstand a certain amount of sunlight, but just like them, she hated it as it caused her pain. Before she left, she looked back at the young girl and her mother, who were both looking at her through the window. Even through the old, dirty window, she could see the tear marks on their faces. The scent of grief, regret, and despair filled the air, almost like music to her ears. With one quick morning walk and a measly $80, she'd already found a good potential meal. The pain and loss had almost soaked through their entire bodies, and seeing the possessions of the husband and father being bought and taken away by a stranger could only have pushed it further. She had found the right place, a place full of livestock. The night finally came, and Sabrina awoke from her slumber. Her eyes glowed in the ethereal green light, and she moaned with excitement. This was the second night that she was here, and she was starving. She needed blood. She needed flesh. She needed brains and bone marrow. But just as she glided through the house, she heard music coming from her storage room. How dare anyone come into her place? Sabrina licked her fangs as she slowly and quietly opened the door to her storage room and slithered inside like a shadow. Her fingers, with razor-sharp nails, sliced through the air, eager to tear through the flesh and bones that came her way. The room was dark, just the way she liked it, a creature of the night. She did not need light to see. It was the phonograph. Somehow, the single record on it started spinning on its own, and thus came slow, smooth, and maybe slightly romantic song. It was the phonograph. Somehow, a single record on it started spinning on its own, and thus came a slow, smooth, and maybe slightly romantic song. It was not connected to an electrical outlet at all. Maybe it had batteries inside? Magic. Though faint, she could still smell it. Was it a wizard? Or a hunter? Neither made much sense right now, for she was able to hide from them for decades, and there were no signs of them ever being close. Sabrina sensed movement behind her, and she immediately swung her right claw around. The swing could have torn through metal armor, yet it hit nothing but air. Her arms and legs grew longer, raising her height. Her eyes grew bigger, sharper, and her jaw opened wider. She was pissed. Someone was taunting her, and she couldn't wait to turn whoever it was to shreds. Something fell on her side, and her nail sliced into dozens of pieces before it even touched the ground. It was the toolbox. Nothing else. A sense of extreme danger exploded in her stomach, and before she could act, something plunged through her heart from the back. She screamed with agony, her arms flailing in the air. Then whoever did this kicked her in the back, twisted the blade, then pulled it out. She tried to turn around. Something swiped through her neck, and the world spun as she lost her voice. Her left cheek made contact with the ground and bounced and slid to the side. Her headless body collapsed before her eyes. The shadow that attacked moved in on her. As the last drops of blood and life gradually left her body and her world darkened. The wooden dog, either a Shiba Inu or a corgi, with Sabrina's thick, dark blood splashed all over its smiling face and exposed tongue, walked toward her step by step, like an emotionless robot. The last thing Sabrina saw was the dull, wooden sword raised up high before her eyes, and behind it stood a vaguely, slightly chubby and bearded shadow. Who or what it was, though, she could never tell. Oh, I love this so much. I like the dog. I like her bringing it home. I like her being a predator and being preyed upon by the way that she was trying to prey on somebody else. I was so excited for the prompt this month because I was thinking of like a monkey paw or the copper teapot or whatever it was, where it was like a cursed teapot that like gave people money, but then like their life fell apart. And I was so excited to see what you guys would do. And this is so much fun. I would love just like a whole collection of like short stories that are just different magical items just like this. It's so fun. Brah. This is why Egao Chan's one of the favorites also, because Egao Chan's just a fun person. Like seriously though. Oh, we got to do, let's see. The next story is by RSAlessi. And I am looking forward to this because I didn't think that I was going to get a story from RSAlessi this month. Yeah. And then I opened the thing this morning and I'm like, there's one. Yes. Okay. Looking for trouble, Xander prowled in his bedroom. Wasn't much to do, rules being what they were, but he was in a mood and he was determined to get into mischief. He fingered the bed quilt. It looked homemade. Hundreds of mismatched square scraps stuffed with lumpy filler and stitched together in no particular order. The furniture was mismatched too, all of it chipped, scratched, and in some cases glued back together. Enough of this place. He drifted down the hall, passing the other bedroom, John's, strictly off limits, and their shared bedroom, a tiny space locked in an eternal battle with mildew. Nothing to do about it. The apartment overhead had a leak, and so they had a flourishing mildew colony. Next came the kitchen. Xander paused long enough to stow dishes from the sink rack into the cabinet. Not one dish matched another, and he wondered what possessed John to seek out these orphans. Each might be the last surviving member of sets John had collected over decades, centuries even. The living room offered nothing of interest, but he circled anyway. Something that might be buried between the sofa cushions, little baggies of weed maybe. He knelt down and started rooting. It was the kind of sofa his grandma owned when she was still alive. Pattern looked familiar. Maybe it was his grandma's sofa, though she kept hers slip-covered in plastic. A pile formed as he excavated. Pencils, coins, M&Ms. He kept digging. No weed. The former owner had been a square. Last came the balcony. John grew all sorts of green stuff out there, veggies mostly and herbs, but also poisonous plants. John told Xander to stay away from those. He edged the sliding glass door open and stepped outside. Slanting spring sunlight cut winter's lingering chill and warmed his bare arms. A narrow path cut between dozens of potted plants leading to the rail. Below in the common area, Miss Oliver walked her 6 Yorkies. Damn things wouldn't stop yapping. He ducked back before she spotted him. If she caught sight of him again, Lord only knew what rumors her sordid little mind would come up with. In one corner of the balcony was a little green door. He maneuvered around a couple dozen pots and checked the knob. Locked. Nothing a credit card couldn't open. John kept gardening tools out here, and the spade worked well enough. Scraped along the molding. The door popped open. For a moment, he stared. John hadn't specifically forbidden him from entering the storage unit. His eyes adjusted. Normal people kept holiday decorations in their storage unit, but not John. His was crammed with what looked like unwanted leavings of a dozen garage sales, worthless furniture, most of it broken. Boxes of random junk piled everywhere, knickknacks and curios squirreled away in every nook and cranny. Of course he was going to touch everything. It might be junk, but it was interesting junk, like the copper lamp over there. The crooked broom, half of its bristles gone, the brass grasshopper, one antenna bent. He considered rationing his exploration to a few objects every day. He could make up stories about what they were and how they came into John's possession. He sighed. Their stories were probably better than his. A scrap of mottled gray fur stuffed between the rungs of a chair caught his eye. It was soft to the touch and warm. He held it to his cheek. Smelled nice, too. Clean. When consciousness returned, he found himself on the floor of the storage unit. Familiar experience, waking up disoriented, but normally his time-traveling adventures involved intoxicants. The room smelled funny. Bad. He didn't want to stay here. He tried standing up. Couldn't. Wriggling on his belly, he crossed the pebbly concrete balcony and squirmed through the sliding door. The carpet smelled funny, too. Strong. Like stuff that could make him sick if he ate it. He wriggled down the hall and into his room. He sat back on the haunches. The bed, his safe place, his home, was out of reach. Legs coiled, he jumped, gripped the edge of his quilt, and hauled himself up, one paw at a time. Circling a few times, he made a little nest for himself on his pillow. Perfect. After nightfall, once the world was dark and safe, he'd explore. Xander, what have you done to yourself? Xander cracked an eye open. Feigning death wasn't an option. John was too smart for that. Nothing. He chittered. Gotten into places you don't belong, I say. Not me, he squeaked. Been sleeping all day. Then explain how you did this to yourself. John scooped him up and carried him to a mirror. He stared at a small, furry creature staring back at him. Oops, sorry. He twisted and squirmed and caught a bit of John between his teeth. Fingers pinched the nape of his neck. Panic drained out of him, and he hung limp. Better men than you have spent the remainder of their existence as rats because of the cursed pelt, John said. I'm not. Yar. Now, hold still. This is going to hurt. Before he could protest, John put his pin knife out, cutting right into him, right down the belly. He shrieked. Getting sliced open didn't feel good, but that didn't stop John. Then John was helping him out of his coat. No, that wasn't right. He lay on the floor, panting. Ye are unlucky bastard. John held a gray scrap of fur between his fingers. I've got worse than this one in my collection. Can I see? No, new rule. Do not use the storage unit. Touch none of its contents. John's words settled on Xander's like a vice. There went his afternoon entertainment. Bruh, I like these two. I'm so interested in these two. You've submitted like John and Xander before a couple of times. Maybe it was only once before. But I'm interested in like the story of these guys and these magical items. I could not have anticipated how much I was going to enjoy just like the craziness that you guys have come up with for this. Or not even the craziness. I could not have anticipated how much I would enjoy specifically how you guys played with having mystical items. I want to know more. And maybe that's going to start sounding repetitive as I go through these. But bruh, I love that she submitted for Xander and John again. I'm very interested in them as characters. The next story is by H.H. Miller. It's called Ma Loved the King. July 10th, 9 to 4 p.m. Garage sale at 4569 Glenswell Drive. A rusty blue Chevy pulled up behind a pair of minivans, its driver squinting in the summer haze at its eclectic wares sprawling across the lawn. As a car pulled up behind him, he tossed aside the opportunity and drove off, muffler sputtering under the weight of recycled metals. That's when he appeared, lumbering up the sidewalk with the duct tape over his shoe, ripped jeans, and a t-shirt that could have been gray once. The man watched the crowd fluttering around, folding tables and rows of cardboard boxes. He lingered off to the side, seemingly shy to join in on the search for something useless. One of the hostesses, a heavy-set woman with a bob of silver hair, welcomed him with her lipstick-smeared grin. She wasn't old enough to retire, but judging by her wares, her life had probably filtered down to trying to grow different tomatoes and occasional attempts at quilting. He chewed on his words, bowing his head, and slunk down first row. Porcelain cherubs, glass swans, and a small stack of china cluttered the first table. It felt as though he was looking at his mother's dresser before he had brushed everything aside in search of spare change. Only one tiny finger broke off her little angel. It had to be her favorite one, so he got his father's belt and empty pockets. When he got older, he was more careful to steal around her trinkets. Of course, Dad had drunk himself out of the picture, and there was no threat of a belt anymore. Moving on past the ancient Singer sewing machine, with all of its parts included, he finally stepped out of the summer sun and into the garage. The cool air coated over the sticky sweat on his back of his neck, but he kept his hands in his pockets, holding tight onto his own trinket. The ladies running this were clearly on the same path that his mother took. Fabric and dollies piled up in the shade, scented with dust and ambiguous floral mixtures. To no surprise, a few jars of potpourri came next. Those might be a good place. They'd hide the stink for a while, even in the blistering heat. He flexed his grip in his pocket, loosening the plastic that had stuck to his skin. Just as he slid his hand toward the glass lid, his toes struck against a box under the table. The old container for an air fryer was full of vinyls, and the note taped to the side said, "Free to good home." In a different time, he'd take the whole box and hide it in his closet. He never had his own record player, and he was never allowed to touch the one in the basement. That would mean the belt, too. Kneeling next to the box, he fingered through the titles. None of the good stuff. Mostly the Beatles, some ballads by Dean Martin, and grooves of the 80s. And the king, Elvis Presley himself. Ma always liked him. He glanced around the garage, but only a middle-aged woman, who must have stopped mid-run or wanted you to think that, stood on the other side, shifting through 50-cent unwanted blouses. Crouched in the corner all by himself, he pulled his trinket from his pocket. There was a double layer of Ziploc between his own fingers and his mother's. Slipping the slender little fingers from its sheath, it thumped down to the bottom of the vinyl box, right next to her favorite man. He leaned the rest of the records in the other direction so that it wouldn't be found right away. He'd still have time to cash that Social Security check and figure out if he'd take the bus out of town or wait on the stoop with a buddy. There was nothing else to remind him of his mother. He left the way that he came, mostly unnoticed, going in a direction that no one could recall. That's the opposite of what a garage sale is for, bro. I don't think you're supposed to dispose of family members and body parts at someone else's garage sale, but that's just me. Who else has this experience? But what a turn of events with it. Like, not expecting that to go. Also, the setting for this piece is so good. Like, I loved the pacing and the bits of information throughout this, the way that you described it. So good, dude. I am drawn in. I don't know if other people obsess with like the rhythm of a piece as much as I do, but I am super auditory when it comes to stuff, and I love your style of writing. The last piece is by Cynthia Mejia, and I think this is your first time submitting, at least that I can recall. So welcome to the I was gonna say the loin. Welcome to the fold, my friend. This piece is called Almost Midnight. Who's going to be the lucky one today? Little Miss Perfect started bringing out her items just as the sun began peeking out from behind a curtain of clouds, still gray and angry from the downpour last night, but light is winning the war this morning, at least in the sky. She fills the tables with knickknacks here and there, clothes on one side, toys on the other, and in between a multitude of items that have lost value to her, a vast array of stuff, the excesses of her middle-class lifestyle on display. It almost seems like a display of her good fortune, of the way life has smiled upon her. Excitement fills me as I walk down the sidewalk. It always does on the first Saturday of the month. I thought I would have become bored, but I haven't. My fingers cling to my little addition to the spectacle. As I passed by first table, I slow and bend, letting the red bottom shoe slide into place on the ground alongside the rest of the discarded garments, all lined up and hoping to get a second chance at life. That thought makes me chuckle as I leave my offering amid the others and continue walking. I move down the sidewalk and away from the fray just as Little Miss Perfect makes her way out of the garage and down the driveway with more items. I make it back to the car and I sit, drinking my coffee and settling in for the morning. Come on, Blondie. I know you see 'em. I know you want 'em. That's it. Yeah. Pick 'em up. She's the first to spot 'em. She looks a little incredulous. She slips her foot out of her tennis shoe and tries on the left heel. Oh no, it doesn't fit. Poor baby. Poor lucky baby. She gives him a longing look as she puts them back. Had this been the original tale of Cinderella, she would have mutilated her feet to slip them into those heels. Alas, she walks away. Well, will you look at that? Where did you come from? A woman much younger than the last slips in between throngs of people who have stopped to look around for a treasure among the trash and scoops up the heels. Her face is giddy with excitement, and it makes my heart rate rise with anticipation. She slips her foot out of the flip-flop, and it slides unimpeded into the heel. First one, then the other. She smiles as if she's won the lottery, and she has. Just not the one she thinks. She steps out of the heels and back into her own shoes, practically dancing up to Little Miss Perfect with money in hand. Little Miss Perfect seems confused and almost ready to argue when she sees the red bottom shoes dangling from the young girl's fingers. But my young friend drops the money and starts to walk away. She's not giving Little Miss Perfect a chance to change her mind, not like the redhead 2 months ago. That was definitely a missed opportunity, I lament. Not this month. I start the car and follow down the road, watching my savvy little shopper as she makes her way through the neighborhood, face glued to her phone, shoes firmly in her grasp. Just as I think she's going to continue walking out of the neighborhood, she turns right and walks just 2 houses down. Her dark blonde ponytail bounces as she makes her way up the driveway and into the open garage. I park. I smile. It's almost midnight, Cinderella. But first, we dance. I really like the perspective on this. I like the way that this character is talking and this narration is put together. And it's very compelling. This makes me want to read it. Because there's just so much pull in the narrative voice, if you know what I mean. Also, apparently, then the last one, it was, I'm going to drop something at somebody else's garage sale. And I was like, does anybody else have this experience? Well, immediately, apparently, somebody else is going to have that experience because happened right immediately. First, I've never seen it before, and then we get 2 in a row. But they're doing, well, both of them are being sketchy. Let's be honest. Both of them were so sketchy, and I would not doubt that this person is a serial killer with a foot fetish. It may or may not be true, but that's the vibe that I get. But this is a really fun writing style, bro. Thank you so much for submitting, Cynthia. I hope to see your work again soon because I really like this. Kind of also curious to see what else you could do. This is what I love so much about Lmiay is and technically also because I'm reading them to you guys, get a sampling of so many different perspectives and so many different creative takes on so many different things. And it's like I get a peek in a bunch of different people's heads and their creativity. And oh my gosh, I love this about this segment. So thank you so much, everybody, for submitting. This was so much fun. And all it does is make me actually want to do a collection or an anthology and invite everybody to submit stuff with cursed items. Maybe that'll be a thing in the future. because I really like this and I would love to see so much more of these. Let me know what your favorite story was down in the comments below, and I hope to see you all next month for the next Lmiay. Maybe you'll take a look at it and join in the party yourself. With all that said, thank you so much. Have a great week and don't die.